My name is Keith Johnson, founder of Biblical Foundations Academy International and host of a brand new podcast that has piqued my interest in inviting you to join me. I hope this introduction will seal the deal, but before we get started, I have to confess that I almost added one of those views expressed disclaimers. Do you know what I'm talking about? The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the podcaster, blah, blah, blah. I have got great news. I won't be one of those guys who gets canned for kicking a societal sacred cow or sacked for stepping on a political landmine. BFA International is in the know. So here we go. Rather than producing this podcast inside a snazzy studio, I decided to make this a bit more personal by creating it in this cozy corner. I think this is going to help me simplify production so that I can focus on sharing the complexity of the content. This all started as a result of my travels in the fall of 2022 while on a prayer pilgrimage to Israel. After the trip, I was invited to travel through Jordan to Saudi Arabia to climb the mountain of God. Seriously. I was so inspired in Saudi Arabia and Jordan, I decided to take an Arabic course just in case I would have an opportunity to return. Then in the spring of 2023, I was back in Israel for our Bible Beyond Borders tour that took us into Judea and Samaria, which is also called the West Bank, behind the borders. As a result of that excursion, I created the Bible Beyond Borders series that includes a glimpse into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. After another fall prayer pilgrimage to Israel, I tacked on a return trip to Jordan to practice my Arabic and visit the top of Mount Nebo, the place where God told Moses to take a peek at the Promised Land. A few days after I returned to the U.S. from Israel and Jordan, I was awakened to the horrible news of what was happening on the morning of October 7th, a date that will live in infamy. I told those close to me that the repercussions from the Hamas attack on Israel on that Sabbath morning and the declaration of war by Israel in Gaza would change the landscape of the Middle East quick, fast, and in a hurry. Oh, how I wish that what I sensed was wrong, but after only 4 months into the growing crisis, the assessment from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirmed my concerns.
I think it's very important to note that this is an incredibly volatile time in the Middle East. I would argue that we have not seen a situation as dangerous as the one we're facing now across the region since at least 1973, and arguably even before that. And that is the environment in which we're operating. And of course, that was triggered by the horrific attacks of October 7th by Hamas against innocent men, women, and children.
The cataclysmic conflict in Gaza kept my eyes and ears wide open about traveling to the country that inspired this podcast. Even though my trip was planned months in advance, I was scheduled to travel only 30 days after October 7th to a regional hotspot that was in the midst of tensions rising and the drumbeat of a wider war growing louder. I think most people may have canceled based on the timing of the trip. I'm just not like most people. I have, however, scratched my bald head and wondered why I was given the rare opportunity to take this trip at such a time as this. The reason is that this Bible seems to lead me beyond borders into some deep stuff sometimes. But in the end, I always find a treasure trove of information, inspiration, and revelation that I want to share. This time, my Bible led me to Iraq. Really, Iraq. When I was scheduled to travel, Baghdad was boiling over with anti-American protests because of U.S. support for Israel's war in Gaza. I must confess that I had no idea how deep the culture of conflict was embedded over there until I was required to hand over my passport more times than I can count in order to get through checkpoints in the Shiite militia-controlled south all the way through central Iraq to the Kurdistan militia-controlled north. I found myself traveling on a tightrope, balancing my Bible with my U.S. passport in a Muslim country that is dabbling in democracy. My trip to Iraq also, however, gave me the inspiration for the name of our brand new audio-video podcast that I'm calling Biblical Iraq Unpacked. Did you know that modern Iraq is located in ancient Mesopotamia, It is the location of the birthplace of the biblical narratives of the Garden of Eden, Noah and the flood, Abraham and Sarah, Jonah and the whale, Daniel in the lion's den, Assyria, Babylon, Nineveh, and beyond. Iraq connects ancient places with awesome artifacts that confirm the amazing message of the Bible for us today. And I simply must share what I encountered there. Just as I started thinking about producing this new podcast, we received a notice from our ad company that there's a new social media sheriff in town that is outlawing select content from being promoted. The newest filter that has just been initiated is called the sensitive events exclusion. The examples of sensitive events include anything that happens with, quote, significant social, cultural, or political impacts such as civil emergencies, natural disasters, public health emergencies, terrorism and related activities, conflict, or mass acts of violence, unquote. In other words, the social media militia are more than likely going to exclude some of what I encountered from my travels that touches just about all the sensitive events bases. It is going to be tough to avoid talking about things that are on that laundry list. Having spent time in Iraq with a quick stop in Doha, Qatar, and a visit to Kurdistan. Now do you understand my concern that I might be at risk of sharing something that would fall under the sensitive events exclusion? I just don't think that I can tiptoe around the tulips when I share what I learned about the battle for Baghdad, the insurgency of ISIS, or the chemical attack on... Oops. I just tripped the sensitive events alarm. Sorry about that. What I experienced on this trip felt like I was in the middle of a geopolitical earthquake that was shaking the world's perspective while the tsunami of public opinion was washing over reality. It has taken me this long to come up with a way to talk about what I encountered while protecting the content from the parrots of propaganda and the social media militia. I will explain what I'm offering in order to sidestep the sensitive events exclusion in our first Biblical Iraq Unpacked episode titled, Guests in the Garden of Eden. Don't worry, it won't trip any alarms. It is available right now for free on a plethora of social media platforms, including our BFA YouTube channel, Facebook page, and on our Bible Beyond Borders section at bfainternational.com. We also uploaded the episode to our BFA Flicks free app that you can download on your Apple or Android device. You can also catch us on 16 podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a whole bunch more. This is going to be fun. So what are you waiting for? Go and take a look and a listen to our brand new Biblical Iraq Unpacked podcast. I've also included a solution for the sensitive events alarm. I hope. And be sure to like, comment, and share if you dare. I need to know if I should keep unpacking what I encountered on my epic trip to Iraq.